Alright, now let's go for the walls with multiple layers. Imagine that we want to define this wall and you need to know only one more point to do it. We have a boundary between finish and the structure of the walls. See, this is the boundary. Now, we call this boundary in here the core boundary, a boundary between the finish and the structure of the wall. And also know that it's on both sides, so we have it here too. Core boundary. Now, what are these two core boundaries? Let's talk about them a little more. Imagine a wall that its structure is now completed. Alright, now those two surfaces on the structure are called core boundaries, and the finishes are out of that. Actually, the surface of our structure is called core boundary. Now, what is the function? Core boundary separates the finish from the structure. You see, this is its main job, separate the finish from the structure. Check this out. We have a boundary here which is not real. It's a virtual line, and it determines that finish, for example, goes that way and the structure comes this way, or separates the finish from the structure. And we have the same thing on this side too. Kind of create a zone that there is only the structure and the insulation in it. That zone is called core. So the finish does not place in the core. And its main job is to make us know that the finish is out of this zone. Now, despite all of my explanations in here, can you say how many core boundaries this wall has? How many can you say? If you say 4, it's definitely wrong. But why? Because the core boundary is not a boundary between both layers. It does not separate the layers. It creates a zone special for insulation and the structure. And out of that is the finish. So we have 2 core boundaries for each wall. One of them is here. You see the boundary between finish and the structure. Just like you can see. Now this is core boundary. And this one is core boundary too. And I told you that by using these two, we create a zone that is special for the structure and the insulation, and we call it core. So these two lines actually separate these two from each other. Now let me tell you one more point and then we'll start drawing the walls. In the materials that are for finishing, do not use the cut pattern. Cut pattern must be actually inactivated. But why? Because the finishings are too thick, 2 centimeters, 3 centimeters, 5 centimeters. And if you draw patterns while printing, they will be black. Pattern, while thickness is little, will be definitely black. And I should also say that when your structure has patterns but no finishing, it's more clear. So we don't use patterns in the finishing materials. If you have this question that what do we do in the magnification, we should have the patterns there. Well, we'll talk about that, but not now. Sometimes, yeah, the finishing will need the patterns, but we will talk about that. So I will draw this 3-layer wall, and then you will draw that 5-layer wall. Let's go. So we come here. We go to the architecture and then wall. Now, because this wall that we are going to design is made of brick, let's duplicate that previous brick wall we created. So I select this and then go to edit type, duplicate, and then I should change its name. I put another slash because another side of it is made of stone, STN. The other side is gypsum. GPS, and then structure, edit. Alright, check this out. How many layers does this wall have? 1. Don't say 3, it's wrong. Those two are core boundaries. I said core boundaries are just separator lines. You see, they're just boundaries. And that's all. So, how many more layers do we need? 2. So, click on Insert twice. Now, the most important thing that you should do now is to manage the place of these layers. Based on my explanation, between the core boundaries, we only have the structure and the insulation. And the finishing has to be out of the core boundary. So I click on one of these layers, and then I have to manage the place with these up and down switches. I click on up, it goes the other side of the core boundary. Then I click on another one, and then click on down, and it comes this side of the core boundary. Alright, I sent these two out of the core boundary, and that's it. There's also another important point, and that's the right place of the layers will affect the design of the floors too, because the floors, while designing, are designed based on the place of the core boundaries. So if we make a mistake here, we will have another mistake in the floors too. Alright, now that the placing is over, we want to manage the features. So let's start from the top. What was this one? A stone. But how did we understand? Because this is the exterior side. So I write the thickness, for example, 5 centimeters. Again, I remind you, pay attention to your unit. My unit is meters. Alright, yours might be millimeters, so be careful. From here, we find out if we have entered the right thickness. Now, let's go for the material. Here we want to have stone, but how do we know it's this side? Because it's written the exterior side. So the stone must be this side. So click on this part, you will see the 3 dots. Click on it. We don't have stone in our list, so we can duplicate this brick. We change the name and also consider a color for it. Then the patterns must be model, as I said. For example, this one, the cut pattern now. And we were supposed not to give pattern to the finish. So no pattern. Alright, and this is the stone. Now, next one. Here we have brick. Here a lot of people make a mistake, and that's, for example, they have used this brick in that wall. So in order to use it here, they go and duplicate it. And it says, for example, brick number 2. Well, there's no reason to do that. If this is the same material, then let it be. But if really the model of that brick has changed, well, that's right, you can duplicate and change it. But if you have the same material, you don't need to duplicate. If this is the same brick, then let it be. So I leave it too, I don't change it. Now the next one. And actually the thickness was the same too. Don't change it. Here we have gypsum, and the thickness is 3 centimeters. Again, be careful about the unit. The right number must be entered. The material is gypsum. You can find it in this list, but if it's not, then you can duplicate the brick too. So, now I have to enter the right name. The color white. Surface pattern we don't have because it's gypsum. And then the cut pattern that we agreed not to have for the finishings. Now let's go for the function. stone must be finish. Alright? I said that don't get involved in finish number 1 and 2. I will tell you when we go to the details, but because it's stone, so let's say finish number 1 and then the gypsum finish number 2. It's not much different, as I said. We can talk about that later too. Now let's look at the others too. The first one was structure, the next one was substrate, next one was thermal air layer, then finish 1 and 2, and then the membrane layer. And then click on OK, and that's it. Well, in the previous episode we agreed to have the location line on the finish face exterior, but now we want to change that and always use the core face exterior. But why? Because before we did not know anything about the finish and the structure, now we do. And we had to use that. Now we know that the base of the execution is from the structure to structure, not from finish to finish, so it must be the core face exterior. Alright? So I select this and then I draw it so that you can see. It draws it from here. It used to be the exterior face of the wall. Alright, now I want to start drawing. Well, when I, for example, want to draw a rectangle, for example like this, now the stone is on the exterior part and the gypsum is on this interior part. If I draw this here, now this stone is inside, so what should I do? We already know that if we select a wall and then click on space, they will be exactly opposite. But there's another thing too. If I select this and click on space, the plan will change too. And I don't want that to happen. I want it to be on the same side with that one. But when I click on space, because the location line is in here, it will change based on that. So what should I do that by clicking on space, it doesn't happen because it happens a lot? Well, I'm going to tell you the solution now. First of all, select your wall and then go to the location line from the properties and click on the wall center line. And when you do this, the location line goes in the middle. So when I click on space, you see, it doesn't change. So if that happened to you, if it changed, you will change the location line to the wall center line, click on paste, and then change it back to the core face exterior. In this way you can fix the walls. Some other people believe that in order to keep this from happening, you should always draw your walls clockwise, like this. When you draw it anti-clockwise, this happens. Now if you can, try to always draw it clockwise. But if suddenly you forgot or you make a mistake, just like I said, select it and change it to wall center line. Click on space and again change it back to core face exterior. Just like that. Let me also give you a warning. If you change this to coarse, the layers cannot be seen. When it's on fine, it can be seen, but when it's on coarse, no. The next warning is that you can never see the layers in the 3D, because in 3D they're not cut, so you can't see the layers. Even if it's on fine, you cannot see it. In the plan, if we change it to fine, it can be seen, or if we cut it. And the ultimate point is that when we change it to coarse, neither the layers can be seen nor the color. It's actually showing another color. Both walls with and without layers don't have any color. That's what I'm going to tell you. You can change something about the walls from the edit type, which is called coarse scale fill color. From the top, you can determine what pattern it uses. For example, I choose solid fill and I change the color to, for example, orange. Alright, now if I change it to coarse, you see what happens? So we can manage that how our walls appear when they are on coarse. We can choose which pattern it shows. We can also choose which color it has. Just like that. Now I want you to go for the 5-layer wall that we had before and draw it. And one more thing, do not continue until you haven't finished that 5-layer wall.